Meet George and Crissy. Crissy, a retired nurse, and George, a curious and lovable little tyke. Crissy is George's caregiver when George's parents are at work. They laugh, play, learn, and dance with each other throughout the day. Besides being best friends, Crissy and George share a very special and unique bond. They are both heart survivors. Crissy met her husband Kevin at Fort Rucker, Alabama in 1987, where they were both stationed. The following year, in April of 1988, they were married. In addition to being a nurse, she was also a helicopter pilot for the National Guard. The two of them served our country and raised 3 wonderful children in the process, but their lives were about to change in 1997.
She had cancer. She had to go through chemotherapy and radiation. She had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And so that kind of ended her flying career, and I'd already gotten out of the Army. So we moved back to my hometown of Watertown, and I practiced law there for a few years, and she worked in the hospital. Then we moved out to Rapid City, worked there for about 5 years, and then we moved to Pierre, and it's in Pierre that the event happened.
It was VTAC. I went into ventricular tachycardia. I don't remember a whole lot of what had happened.
Yeah, her heart rate sped up very fast, and then it stopped because it was basically overworked. And then because she was deprived of oxygen for a certain amount of time, there was neurological damage. So she went into the hospital primarily as a heart patient, because that's the event that started it, the VTAC.
I had a subsequent anoxic brain injury.
Right, an anoxic brain injury.
And all the paramedics that came to my rescue were gentlemen that I had worked with. And going into the emergency room, the doctor that I was friends with, and I feel very blessed that the circumstances happened that way. I just think that it's just kind of a God thing that all these people that were my friends were taking care of me, and they shocked me more times than they would kind of a normal person, I would think.
With all of this, Crissy slipped into a coma.
Sometimes you see on a movie or on TV, somebody just wakes up from a coma and says, "Where the heck am I?" That wasn't what it was like at all. It was all very gradual, opening her eyes after a couple days. But she had what they call doll's eyes, it wouldn't focus on anything. And then a couple days later, she would focus on something as it moved. Her eyes would move inside her head, and that was a big breakthrough. She'll be telling us something, and she gets stuck and she can't think of a word. And that happens to all of us sometimes. But she'll be stuck on a word, and one of the doctors taught me, even if you know that word, don't say it. Let her work it out, because that kind of helps those pathways to rejuvenate themselves.
With the support of her family, she had to learn how to walk, talk, and who her family was. However, she retained all of her nursing and medical knowledge.
George is the strongest-willed baby I have ever met in my entire life. He's so tough.
Rainey and Justin married in 2011, and a year later they were ready to start the family they had both dreamed of. Unfortunately, they were having trouble conceiving a child.
We did see a doctor. We did 3 rounds of fertility treatment, and it gets very expensive very quickly. And that was the cheap version that we did. And we were told that it wouldn't be possible without fertility treatment.
But then a miracle happened.
And so that's why George was such a surprise.
The Liscos were finally having a child, and were as excited as expecting parents could be. But for this miracle child, things were not going quite as planned.
He was crazy already. The second ultrasound, he was literally bouncing off the walls, just wild as can be. And then the third one was 20 weeks, which is when you find out boy or girl. First thing, we found out he was a boy very quickly. He was not being shy. And then they continually took pictures of his heart, just over and over and over again. So we kind of figured something was up.
The doctor told us his heart's on the wrong side of his body, and usually there's issues with that. And it's the scariest thing you can hear. They didn't even tell us if George would be able to live. So it was really scary.
We got in the car and he pretty much just said, "I wish I could just fix it." And I mean, I think that's a guy's mentality, is I just want to fix it. So that was his first words when we got back to the cars. I'll do whatever I can to fix it. So when they noticed his heart was tilted to the right, the first thing they said was we should probably see a specialist and do an amniocentesis. We didn't get those results until almost, 30 weeks?
30 some weeks.
Yeah. So there was a lot of time of, is our baby gonna live or die?
Yeah, we called everybody we knew, asked them to pray, because like I said, they told us they didn't know what it meant. We had to see a specialist, and so nobody knew what that, at the OB's office, they don't know what that means exactly for George. We weren't expecting George to cry. The doctors told us when he was born, he would most likely be silent and blue and not really very much alive. And so then when he was born crying, I think we were both overjoyed. He was screaming, yeah. And I think the doctors were overjoyed. Everybody was excited and a lot of the tension was gone.
Shortly after being born, George needed surgery.
His first surgery, he was about 2.5 months old, which was better than expected. We were expecting surgery on day 5. So we got to bring him home, get to know him, bond with him, and then we went to Omaha when he was 2.5 months old for his BT shunt, which is supposed to be a fairly minor open heart surgery. Wasn't so minor for George. He actually died for 4 minutes, 23 hours post-op. So we watched our 2.5-month-old have CPR right in front of us.
So I was in the room, when he coded, and I got up because I was really like, what's going on? Like I was asleep when everything happened, and I got up and I was like kind of just stood up, and the nurse said, you can stay here if you want, but I think Mom is outside if you want to walk out there. And I was like, oh, I probably better walk out to Rainey. So I walked out to Rainey, and we just sat there on the floor, probably crying. Mm. And then when you could hear him say we have a pulse, it was the greatest thing I ever heard in my life. Mm-hmm.
7 months old, he went back for a second surgery just in December of this last year. That was a far more complicated surgery. We did not exactly know what was going to be happening. We had a general idea, but last minute it kind of got switched once the surgeon studied the 3D model of his heart.
Both Crissy and George had very life-altering and harrowing experiences, something in common. Then they became friends, best friends. But just how did their paths cross?
We actually asked a friend of ours if she knew anybody who could watch George, and she actually sent a text to her group of girls, and Crissy was the one who said, I want to watch this little boy. We had never met her. We went to church together and never had met her and her husband, but she was more than qualified, and those two have bonded like no other.
Is there anyone that could possibly take care of this young baby who just had heart surgery? He's just 3 months old. If you come across somebody that would be really interested or qualified enough, it's like, what about me? I could do that. So George has just been a godsend.
And their friendship, George and Crissy, has blossomed from there.
She called Rainey and said, maybe I could do this. And they talked about it. And then so they set a time for her to go over and actually meet George. And so it was in the afternoon and I was at work, and my phone rings and it's her, and I answer it and she says, I have a new boyfriend. He's about 4 months old and he's about 2 feet tall. So she's been thrilled to be his caregiver since day one.
It was a short time later that Justin found out something special about Crissy. She, too, was a heart survivor.
I actually didn't know Crissy's story at all. These guys, Justin and Crissy, have lunch together every day. So they've got to know each other very well. And he said one day, you gotta ask Crissy about her story. And so I talked to her about it, and I was flabbergasted that somebody had a story so similar to George's that was now caring for a heart patient, was now caring for a heart baby. Just pretty incredible, and the way that their paths collided was just miraculous.
He is sweet. He is curious. He just loves music. When I'm taking care of him, I always have music going. And we dance around, and we just really enjoy each other's company, and I can make him laugh and he makes me laugh, and it's just really a wonderful fit. And I just love being able to take care of him, and knowing I'm glad that Rainey and Justin are glad that there's somebody taking care of him that loves him so much and is taking such good care of him. I'm just really thrilled for the opportunity.
Today, Crissy is doing amazing. Her limitations are less, she can drive again, and most importantly, she has a healthy heart. Although George is healthy and growing, when he turns 7 or 8, he will still need at least one more surgery.
At some point in the future, George will have to have a third surgery, at least one more. He does have a piece of donor tissue in his heart that someone generously gave from their baby that had passed away. So that will have to be replaced. We're hoping that he can go until about 7 or 8 years old.
As George goes into surgery and successfully survives his third operation, he and his family can rest easy knowing that Crissy will be there for them as he recovers. One heart survivor helping another. And as you've seen with their stories, heart disease can be survived, but it can't be done alone.
Well, in the first place, I don't think in this nation that there is a single family that could say that their families have not been affected by heart disease, whether it would be strokes or heart attacks or other vascular problems. Everybody has been affected.
So if it weren't for the American Heart Association and the money that they put towards research, George would not be with us. Likely Crissy would not be with us. The fact that they found out about his heart condition by technology when his heart was the size of, what they say, a quarter or a dime?
Yeah, a dime.
That would not have been possible without the advancement of technology and the generous people that donate towards their cause.
With generous support from you and the American Heart Association, countless lives have been saved, but there is more work to be done. Please continue your support to the American Heart Association so they can further the research to save countless more lives like Crissy, George, or even you or someone you love.